Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today. What's up, Baylor family? Welcome into Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. It's Wednesday, September 4th. This is your host, Colt Barber. Grayson will be back on a little bit for our weekly mailbag, but first, I'm joined by Baylor Director of Sports Journalism, Jerry Hill. He will bring us up to speed on the start of the season for Baylor volleyball and soccer, and also give his perspective on the football team's first game of the season. Great, Jerry, great to have you on today. How's the start of the athletic season going for you?
I appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for having me today. Man, it's been fun. You know, soccer has struggled obviously the last few seasons, so to see them get off to the start that they have, that's been a lot of fun. You know, I was just ready to get a football game in. It didn't matter really what it looked like, but you know, I think they showed some good signs. Obviously, they have some things to work on as well. But yeah, it was a great opening weekend for football and volleyball as well.
Right. So Coach Leonard, in her third season at Baylor with soccer, the direction of the program has consistently gone up. Obviously 4-11-2 in 2022, 9-7-3, 2023, and now they're off to a 4-1 start this year after dropping their home openers of four contests in a row that they've won, capped by that exciting victory over Texas A&M. I mean, what was that victory like for you to see?
Man, it was amazing, Colt. You know, obviously this is a team that kind of needed a little bit of a signature win. I mean, you know, they have gotten off to a good start, beat a good Portland State team on the road in Hawaii, that is. But yeah, this was a team I think that really needed something like what it got, I guess that was Friday against A&M. Man, A&M is a good team. They came into the season ranked, had lost a game, so they had fallen just out of the rankings. But this is a good team that, you know, has regularly made, you know, decent runs in the NCAA tournament. And you know, to your point of, you know, them continuing climbing with Coach Leonard. Yeah, I thought it was a big step last year, Colt, when soccer just made the Big 12 tournament. I think that was a good next step. But now, I think you got to have your eyes set on the NCAA tournament, getting there and maybe doing some damage when you get there.
Yeah. So what is the reasoning behind this climb? When we know her history previously and what she brought when she came to Waco with her pedigree as a coach, but why specifically has this program gone from where it was in 2022 and prior to her arrival to where it is now, and obviously trending upwards compared to where they had been?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just getting players in, you know, increasing your level of talent. You know, you brought in some DBU transfers and they were good. Ashley Merrill has had 2 really good years here. But I think they needed to continue to, you know, rise that athleticism and just everything, soccer, playing ability, all of that. And I think that's what they've done. You know, Tyler Isgrig came in last year as a transfer from TCU and obviously had a good, season last year, but she and had struggled to score through these first few games. But, obviously got the big, game winner on Friday night in the last 6 minutes. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, Colt, is just the level of talent has continued to go up and up and up. And that's Michelle Leonard, settling into, this is a different level than what she was at DBU. So I think that's some of it is just her settling into this is Division I soccer and this is Big 12 soccer. And I think she's continued to grow as a coach. But again, I think the biggest thing was recruiting and bringing in just better and better players.
Yeah, it was really cool to see that great crowd for that game against Texas A&M too. Obviously, a regional rivalry. Baylor fans wanted to see that students can see it, but it was really cool to see that. But they get back to action tomorrow in Dallas, taking on SMU. Game time is 7 p.m. Central Time, so obviously another big matchup there. But let's move on. Let's go to the volleyball. And obviously, Coach McGuire there, now 3-0, ranked 23. in the country. They still have the toughest matches are still ahead, but I think we all have faith in what they can do on the volleyball court, especially before getting into Big 12 play.
Yeah, Colt, I think that what they did what they needed to do this past weekend, and hosting their own tournament, the Baylor Classic, playing 2 on Friday and 1 on Sunday, and they just needed to go out there and take care of business, and they did. 3 straight sweeps. Tulsa is a good team, and they beat them in straight sets. I think Tulsa might have been the only team that even got to 20 points. So I think they did exactly what you would like to see, is just went out there and dominated. And had some new faces come on, and so that was cool to see that, you had the Elise McGee and Lauren Briseño and people like that back. But man, Kendall Murphy, who played very little, except toward the end of last season, she had a huge tournament. I believe she was the tournament MVP. And then seeing the Auburn transfer, Jackie Barrett Frazier, she was really good in that setter role, had a lot of what they call dump kills. So yeah, it was fun seeing them and just seeing them get off to that kind of start. You knew the talent was there. I mean, you saw the preseason ranking and all that, but they went out there and proved it.
Yeah, so they have a tough upcoming schedule through the rest before Big 12 play starts. I mean, obviously Texas is now a non-conference match, right? And that was the program that was on top of the Big 12 forever. Now it's a non-conference match. They has some other top matches as well. I think Minnesota, Wisconsin's on there.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the upside for this particular team? Obviously, we can talk about Big 12 play, but the expectations are NCAA. What is the ultimate goal for this team this year?
Yeah, I think this program is to a point where you're disappointed if you don't make it to like the round of 16. Say, that needs to be at least the standard. Is you get to the round of 16 and hopefully even farther. But I think when you've been to the level that they have been, and that was a Final Four a few years ago, I think you expect to not just get in the NCAA tournament, but win a match or two. And last year was a little bit of a tough year, but did win an opening round match. So I think that has to be the ultimate goal, and certainly they want to compete for a Big 12 championship. They did that again a few years ago with Texas, co-champions with Texas, and then that was the year that they also made it to the Final Four. But Colt, I think that would be probably maybe goal number 2. I think goal number 1 is getting to the NCAA tournament and seeing how far you can go. But certainly they want to win a Big 12 championship, or at least finish as high in the standings as they can.
All right, so ranked 23rd right now. Have another matchup Friday against Minnesota, 7 p.m. We'll be on ESPN Plus. So if you have that subscription, if you don't get it, but if you don't have, or if you do have it, go ahead and hop on and watch them. Volleyball is so entertaining. It's one of my favorite sports to watch. All right, so it is football season, and Baylor just finished up their first game. You've been around the team all spring, all fall, now one game week. Is the internal vibe that you see line up with what we hear from the press conferences? Coach Aranda talking about the team being different. Do you see that through 1 week of the season and after seeing them in the spring and fall as well?
Yeah, I'm comparing it to, or looking at last year and then looking at this year's team. And I mean, Colt, it really does look like a different team. I mean, this is so much different than last year, and you kind of expected that. I mean, you got a new offensive coordinator, you got a new quarterback, you've got so many guys that came in through the transfer portal, so you expected some newness and some excitement from that, and I think that's what they got. But as we said from the start, that was not the perfect game. In August 31, you probably don't want to play, the perfect game, but I think it was what they needed to do. Kind of like what I was talking about with volleyball. You just needed to go out and dominate it. You needed to get out there and get so many of those new players indoctrinated into this level, to this game. And I think they did that. They got off to a great start with 21 first quarter points. I think there was a little bit of a lull in the middle. Some mistakes there. Obviously, DeQuan threw a couple interceptions. But then they finished the way that you would like to see them finish. The game's decided, but, Sawyer goes out there and leads them on a touchdown. They got a field goal in the fourth quarter as well. So that was good to see. That's kind of the goals pretty much every week. You want to start fast and finish. And they did both of those. Now they just got to get that middle part fixed, you know, where you don't want to have those lulls.
Right. No doubt. So they were up 21, 28 at 0 at half.
Right.
You mentioned that lull, but they did take control and then just kind of probably in my vantage point, they did what they wanted to try to do, that maybe the things they needed to work on. So, but overall, I mean, what was your biggest takeaway, maybe from a personnel perspective? Did we find out anything about this team in that area?
You know, Colt, I think my biggest takeaway personnel wise was probably with that defensive line. I didn't really know what to expect, you know, with Cooper Lance is the only one really with a whole lot of experience. But I thought Trevin Maai and Jackie Marshall, I thought both of those guys played really well. You know, the numbers aren't going to just floor you. But I think a lot of what they did was they held linemen up where the linebackers could come and make the tackles. So I thought both of those guys made a huge impact. And then obviously Keaton Thomas with his pick six. I think the defense is probably what got my attention more than anything. But it did show on the offensive side, it does show kind of that big play potential that you wanted to see out of this new offense, the Jake Spavital offense. So I think you got that. And I think they can do so much more there, though. And it was good that they established the run. I think you need to do that in this offense, and they were able to do that with Richard Reese and Dawson Pendergrass. But you want to see more of that, and you want to see more of those big plays. Let's see some of those stretch plays that that this offense is capable of.
Yeah, no doubt. Jerry, really appreciate you coming on today. It took a little while to get you on here, but we look forward to doing it every single week moving forward, and hopefully talk about a few more Baylor wins for all of their sports next week.
Hey, I appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for having me.
Back here with Grayson Gruenhafer after a great conversation with Jerry Hill, and it is time for our weekly mailbag that you provide the questions for. Is honestly one of my favorite segments of the week. We've only done it. This is our second time, but I have been looking forward to answering questions, and we can't get to all of them. But we will get through as many as we can that are very relative to what's going on. Grayson, and we had a great time doing this last week. So I'm just going to dive right in. And first user is actually a Sikkim 365 user. All of these, I encourage you, if you are on Twitter, on social media, YouTube comments, whatever it is, please leave questions for us, and we'll make sure to find those. We want to put them utilized everywhere, not just off the Sikkim 365 message board. So the first comment that we had was from Merrill at TCT on Sikkim 365. Where do we match up best with Utah? And do we have enough strength that can take advantage of a relative weakness for Utah? Grayson, I will hand that one to you first. We kind of talked about this yesterday, but where do you see a weakness for Utah and where Baylor might be able to take advantage of?
So I think there's two that we talked about, and I'll let you hit on the other one. I assume you know the other one that I'm talking about, but I would say first the secondary is the initial one that comes to mind. Baylor's passing attack should be really good this year. Baylor's passing attack should be one that is solid and continues to improve as the offense expands even more over these next couple weeks. I think Taquan Finn has a lot of experience going on the road. He's played at Ohio State. He's played in tough environments. This is a guy that is not going to be afraid about playing at Utah. Like, he's just not. And so I think that kind of mindset, that kind of attitude from your leader is very important. He's going to have to come out and play with a lot of confidence. He's going to have to take care of the football, but he's also going to have to hit on some big shots down the field, because I do think that's the area that Baylor can attack Utah's secondary. The other area that I was going to mention is I think it's an unknown, sort of, but I do like Baylor's kind of chances on the defensive line against Utah's offensive line. I think they can at least match them, if not win by a little bit. That's kind of the other area that I'm looking at that I think Baylor can win.
Yeah, and these are what we talked about yesterday. I look at the offensive line for Utah against Baylor's defensive line. If you have concerns about Baylor's offensive line experience and what they do, Utah's in a very similar boat in terms of overall experience on the offensive line. I would say that if you look at recruiting rankings, they have guys that are fully capable, but they have two guys that have played over 1,000 career snaps. The other three are 600 and below. And that's, I mean, it almost lines up identically to Baylor's offensive line experience. In their first game against Southern Utah, they rushed for less than 200 yards, which is like, well, they still rushed for 180 or whatever it was with the touchdown. But that's not what Utah typically does. And it could have been in a game planning situation. But I think that what we saw from Baylor's defensive line, the talent that we know that they have added there, and they've kind of filled in some holes in terms of adding transfer portal guys, but also getting Jackie Marshall back from injury last year. And he was just terrific, grading over 90. I think it was over 90, 90.3 by PFF, which was just terrific for a defensive lineman in their first game. I think there's some potential issues there. And I think it can tell us a lot about Baylor's defensive line. I still expect Utah to be pretty strong with their offensive line, but if Baylor can take advantage of any weaknesses there from their defensive line, will be very telling, even if they don't win this game for the rest of the season.
Right. And I mean, if anyone remembers last year's game, it was basically decided on the fact that Utah had a mobile quarterback that they brought in, and then they just allowed their offensive line to just wear down Baylor. That's essentially what happened. Nate Johnson came in, they ran him, they ran Jaquindon Jackson, and Utah's offensive line eventually just wore down Baylor's defensive front. I think Baylor's more equipped to handle that type of challenge. I have concerns about other areas in this game. They're going to be challenged more in the secondary on the other side as well by Cam Rising. But I think up front, defensively, I think Baylor's equipped to, I think, handle what Utah has in store for them and really find a way to slow down the rushing attack that Utah wants to establish.
Yeah, and I will also add that behind Baylor's defensive line are two guys in Keaton Thomas and Matt Jones who have playmaking ability. I would not say that the duo from that particular game behind that particular defensive line last year ever had the opportunity to go and make plays in the run game. And I think that Baylor's linebacker room is more equipped this year. A lot of changes have been made to Baylor's front seven. We don't know a ton about them in terms of upside right now, but we're going to find out a lot in this game. So great question. Appreciate that one. Obviously, very fun to talk about other teams' weaknesses at times. But second question, ATX Bear. Do you have any confidence that the offensive line can make reasonable progress as the season unfolds? I'm going to take this one to start. Yes, absolutely, 1,000% that if you don't expect progress from a new scheme, a lot of new faces, with an offensive line coach in Mason Miller that has done it, it just, if you can't, or if ultimately this team does not progress, that's an issue, because new scheme that's a baseline of saying it's a new scheme. It's going to get better. In a way, it's more plug and play than it ever has been. But offensive liner, they have to gel. And they brought 4 transfers in the summer. And that in and of itself means that it's going to take more time, especially if one of those offensive linemen who are transfer are talented enough to play, but they need to come up to speed in learning the scheme. I think we're seeing that right now. I don't know how quickly some of those guys can take positions or ultimately win or lose battles, but this group should get better. It's how quickly can they get better, and how good can they be relative to their counterparts.
I mean, I do think that they can get better. I think they should get better. I still kind of think this group will have ups and downs. I don't think this is going to be just a dominant offensive line similar to 2021. I just don't really see that. But I do think they have the parts, and they do have the talent to improve. They do have the experience to improve. They got guys who are also young, who have the ability to develop. And I think a big thing really for this group is going to come down to when they find their cohesive 5, and when they really decide, okay, these are our 5 guys, and we're going to roll with those guys. We feel very confident about them. We're going to give them all the snaps. I think that's when you could see this group really turn the corner. I don't think they're there yet. We'll see if they get closer to that in this Utah game. I think we're going to find out really quickly who can, really play at this level, and then maybe who can't. I think we're going to find that out rather quickly. And this is probably the best defense Baylor's going to play all year, to be honest. And so, again, we'll know a lot about Baylor's offense line, about where they're at and potentially kind of where they're going.
Yeah, and I want to add to there, you're going to see 2 really 3 offensive position coaches that are just now learning their personnel, and player personnel who is just now learning their coaches and what to anticipate. And that in and of itself, like Jake Spavital, Mason Miller, and Jared Anderson specifically, and when you're talking about pass protection in a lot of ways, they're going to learn the strengths and weaknesses of their team. They saw so much of it in fall camp against their own defensive line. They saw it in the spring, but they're going to learn what their strengths and the weaknesses are. Jake Spavital is going to become a better play caller as he understands that, and just a scheming in general. Like, you can't scheme around your deficiencies unless you know what they are, and that's going to improve throughout the season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like how hard Mason Miller was coaching that group. He was getting on guys in that first game, and he was on the field. It was really cool to see him just really kind of getting after it. And that's great to see. I think he's going to push these guys to a level that should, again, make them competitive. I think in the first game, we saw a group that was improved, but I also think that this is a group that still has steps to take, still has decisions to figure out as far as who the for sure starting 5 are. But I am encouraged by kind of the 8 guys that they've kind of that we've seen the most of, with the starting 5, and then Sidney Fugar, Gavin Byers, and Caden Siraki kind of being 3 guys that I feel like are kind of right there in the mix. Maybe there's some other guys, Colin Truitt, guys like that who we could also mention, but that group right there seems very much in the mix and played quite a bit in that first game.
Yeah, if you look at the top 8 snap getters on the offensive line, it was a starting 5 plus the 3 that you just mentioned, and it looks to be the main rotational pieces. Now they got to put them together. So ATX Bear, thanks for the question on the offensive line, which has been kind of the hot topic all through fall camp. All right, next question is from Make My Day. They ask, how many points do you think Baylor needs to score in order to beat Utah? Grayson, take this one for starters.
This is a good question. Last year, it wouldn't have taken very many. It would have taken 21. I think they lost.
And that was and that would have been 20. Like late in the game. Yeah, that was late in the game that they would have needed 21. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's hard for me to envision that it's going to be that much of a slugfest. I really do think there will be some points scored. I don't think this is just going to be, hand the ball off and no one's scoring, no one's moving the football. I just don't really know that these two teams are, they can be built that way, Utah for sure, but I also think they're going to be more explosive than that. So I'll say 27 points, I think, is what Baylor would need to win this game on the road in Utah.
Yeah, it is very tough to tell, because I think for me personally, we are looking at a defense that we anticipate good things from long-term for this season. Like, I watched that Baylor's defense play, and regardless of opponent, man, they were flying around, they're physical, they were fast. Like, those things popped that did not pop last year. And really, I wouldn't even say popped in general in 2022. It looked more like the 21 team that won the Big 12 championship at every single level, but we don't know until these games happen. Man, 27 to me seems low, because I don't know. I think it all comes down to tempo. It comes down to how well Baylor's moving the ball, because I think Utah will alter what they are doing offensively better than Baylor will alter what they do offensively. If Baylor is able to move the ball, Utah is going to be more saying, okay, we probably need to score a few more points. Let's take a different approach. They're going to alter that game plan a little bit. Man, I don't know if I see right now Baylor holding this specific offense to less than 30 points. So I will say they will need 31 points to win this game. That's like the bare minimum to say Baylor needs to score 31. That means Utah's scoring 30 to win this game. I can't get myself to say right now. I think this defense has potential. Like, after this weekend, you can ask me this question again. I might compel maybe 14 points. I think that potential is there. With Dave Aranda calling these plays, with the talent that they have, especially in this type of matchup, I think they could. I'm just not willing to do it yet.
Yeah, that's a lot of points. And if Utah's scoring 30, Baylor scoring 31 points on the road at Utah, that would be something. But yeah, it's interesting. We're kind of in that same ballpark, though, as far as just like, we think that they're going to need to score some points. We don't think this is going to be you could win with 17 points. I just don't really see that. I think Utah's got too many weapons, and I think they know Baylor too well as well. And Cam Rising looking to make a statement, and all of those things that come together, I think, for Utah in this game, they're going to challenge Baylor.
Yeah. What was your pick? 20, 27,
27.
24? I mean, it's a field goal. It's a field goal. Like,
I
I'm
know.
not that far off.
30
It's a
just
field goal.
sounds a lot worse.
It does. It does. Well, I mean, like you look at season averages, and you're like, the difference between 30 points in the Big 12 giving up on average and 27, that might be 8 spots in the difference. So in the rankings. So it is a big difference. But it could just be a field goal. It could be a turnover in the red zone and Utah gets a field goal out of it. You just never know. So great question there. Tough question. I don't know. We don't know enough about these teams yet, but moving on. Gold Texan. What is the realistic path to 6 to 7 wins? We have some road contests coming up, and they will tell us a lot. Yes, they absolutely six road games this year. Some tough ones on the road. They have to go to Colorado just a couple weeks later after the Utah game, which we know is going to be a crazy environment. Man, after this first weekend of college football and watching Big 12 teams, I feel better after watching Baylor play, after watching other Big 12 teams play. I feel better about Baylor's chances to inch towards 6 to 7 wins. We don't know everything yet, but like you look at Texas Tech struggling. I mean, after they whipped Baylor last year in a lot of ways in Waco, they go out and give up 50-plus points to Abilene Christian. I know Abilene Christian has a good offense, but that's an FCS school. You look at Houston losing at home to UNLV. I mean, and that game wasn't even as close as what the final score was. And I think it was like 34-7 or something. I don't have it at the top of my head. It wasn't even that close. I think UNLV controlled that game. Barry Odom's team did a great job. TCU, in a lot of ways, showed me that they were vulnerable in the things that Baylor matches up well with them. So I think those three have tilted a little bit for me specifically. Those three matchups. I think TCU probably has the highest potential of all those teams to change my mind again. But I'm looking at those 3 wins along with the one that Baylor just got as getting them closer to 6 and 7 wins. I'm not sure yet what I could say I'm feeling best about. I think maybe a game at Colorado that could be a shootout for them to add another win in that. You do have a game at home at the end of the season against Kansas, but you play at West Virginia, you play, I believe, at Iowa State. You play at home against Air Force. Sorry, I didn't mention Air Force. So that is included in that group. That's that important one. BYU. Sorry, I'm going through this list mentally in my head, so I apologize. But there are games that are winnable, like they truly are, that I feel a little bit different about, especially BYU at home. Like that has to be a win at home. So whatever that list, compile it for me and tell me what it was. But I feel pretty good, feel better after the first weekend now to get to 6 or 7 wins than I did before this past weekend.
Right. So basically, I think you and I are probably thinking the same thing. It's like Tarleton State, Air Force, BYU, Houston, feel really good about those. That's 4. That would be 4 wins right there. Then you look at kind of the first week, right? And you're like, okay, does Colorado have a defense? Are they going to be able to run the ball on anybody? I don't know, but their passing attack is scary, very, very scary. Iowa State, you know what you're getting. That's going to be a tough one in Ames. You know who they are defensively. They have an identity. That's probably a loss. But I think, Colorado, Texas Tech, after giving up 50 points to Abilene Christian, that game's not as scary as it once was. The TCU game, like you mentioned, TCU giving up 27 points to Stanford and not looking very good. That's one to keep an eye on. West Virginia getting pummeled by Penn State. Knowing Baylor's luck going to Morgantown, that's probably going to be a 7:00 game, and they're just going to make Baylor go play a night game in Morgantown. But if they get an 11 a.m. game, who knows? Maybe they're able to go in there and create some magic. So there's definitely a path there. The Kansas game at the end of the year, I literally, after that list, that's like 8 wins. That's the path to 8 wins.
Okay, Grayson just predicted
right there.
Yeah, Grayson just predicted 8 and 4. I'm with you. I think you get so caught up in what Baylor's strengths and weaknesses are. We all do that because that's who we watch, that's who we cover, that's who we're fans of. But every single team is going to have weaknesses that make those opposing fan bases thinking, dude, we're going to struggle big time. And then you start looking through the progress of the season that we don't know what happens yet. We don't know about injuries. There's just so many unknowns. And I think there's a path to a bowl eligibility. And I feel that is more realistic now after seeing other teams play and seeing where those weaknesses are. I think that the part that's tough to digest is that They had the opportunity to take advantage of 8 home games last year, 4 away games. And now you're saying, dude, now we got to play 6 road games and we're trying to just get 6 wins. How much more ideal would it have been to last year? I think that scares fans, but you just don't know what's going to happen between now and the rest of the season. Baylor has to take it truly one game at a time. Starts with Utah, but then truly Air Force, Colorado, those games are going to come in due time. You don't know what's going to happen before those games start.
Right. Every game on this schedule, I think, is winnable. The only 2 games that you look at and go, okay, I'm still not convinced Baylor is going to win that game, for me, are at Iowa State and the Oklahoma State game. Those are the 2 games where I'm like, oh, they looked pretty good week 1. I think I kind of know what they are. I can be changed, obviously, as the season progresses. Right now, that's about it. Everyone else just seems completely vulnerable, at least somewhere. And I think that's really appealing if you're a Baylor fan or someone that, follows Baylor a lot. You kind of look at the schedule and you go, wow, it's kind of opened up a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And I think just like we saw with Baylor last year, in 2022, that team was competitive in almost every single game, minus the Kansas State game. No one anticipated Baylor last year completely going in the opposite direction. There were signs that ultimately pointed to that we didn't realize. But there always is a team that just struggles that maybe you did not anticipate them struggle. There's always going to be a team that rises up to that next level. So great question, Gold Texan. Really appreciate that one. Final one for this evening, Bear WG. Which unit will have the biggest impact on our success this year? This is position groups. Which one, Grayson, are you leaning into? I know the most obvious one, and I'm going to try to avoid giving the most obvious one, but what's yours?
The most obvious one is the offensive line. They're going to make or break whether Baylor is really legit. Like if the offensive line is a top, 5 unit in the Big 12, Baylor's probably going to be a top 5 team in the Big 12. If they're right on the middle, right on average, I feel great about Baylor making a bowl game. If they completely fall off, then Baylor might be looking at a season where they win, 3 or 4 games. That's just being realistic. If they have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, which I don't expect, but it's still plausible after what we saw a year ago. That's the most obvious one. I know that's maybe not what people want to hear, but that is the one that is going to make or break Baylor's season.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the other side. I'm going to say biggest impact. I think the defensive line can keep them in a lot of games. And if they are able to play to their potential. And we have seen what a strong defense can do for offenses that have their strengths but also struggle. 2021 was a great example of that. Strong running game, but didn't always have everything it needed to score a lot of points. The defense always kept them in games. I'm going with the defensive front, specifically defensive line and linebackers might give them an advantage, give the offense opportunities to go and win games that they might otherwise not be able to. Man, that was great questions all the way across the board. We look forward to doing these again next week. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. Thanks to Jerry Hill for hopping on today. And thank you all so much for listening. For Grayson Grudenhafer, I'm Colt Barber. Have a great Wednesday and Sick 'em Bears.